Good evening, everyone. We continue with our lesson in First Samuel chapter 4, starting from verse 1. Now, one of the things that we need to remember from yesterday's class in chapter 3 is how God established his words through Samuel at a time where the revelation of God was very rare. But Eli understood and knows this very well. And so what happens is that you would find that God is beginning to speak through um, Samuel, and whatever he says, we saw it yesterday. It did not fall to the ground. Means it was not It was not nothing. It had effect. It was true. The people realizes it, and they have acknowledged. All Israel acknowledged it from Dan to Beersheba. That would be all 12 tribes across the land acknowledge that the word of God is coming through Samuel. And we talked about Samuel being a prophet. Now, as we begin, verse 1 says this, and just take a look at verse 1. Thus the word of Samuel came to all Israel. Now, this word came really means come to pass. Right? That's what it really means. It means that it's fulfilled, right? Fulfilled. It happened, right? It happened. What does that mean? It means that whatever davar that God gave to Samuel, and Samuel brought that same davar to all Israel, it came to pass. It happened. It was fulfilled. This is what this phrase actually means. The reason why this was stated is really to underscore the fact that Samuel is now seen as the prophet of God. This is a very important expression. And I think let us take a short detour to Deuteronomy chapter, Deuteronomy chapter, uh, let me just put it on the screen. Deuteronomy chapter 13, Deuteronomy chapter 18, particular verses 20 to 22, right? 20 to 22. And so I would suggest that when you have the time, please look at these passages because the evidence of a true prophet of God, like Samuel, has to be shown that what he is saying is really what God is saying. And because it is what God is saying, it will always come to pass. And that is this word, it will always come to pass. There are no personal opinions here. It is not Samuel's idea. It is what Samuel receives as a revelation of God uh, through vision. And Samuel repeats it to the people to warn them, to tell them, and to teach them. And hence, these two passages will come in very handy. Now, with that, this is what we find. And then Israel went out to meet the Philistines in battle. Uh, I guess you need to understand that this word meet is to encounter them, to go out and encounter them. Now, I encounter them means to meet them at battle. I guess that would be what it means. They went out from their land, from wherever they have assembled, and they meet the Philistines. And so remember, it is about the Philistines. And from here on, you see the Philistines becoming a perennial enemy of Israel. And they went out to battle, and that's what we have read. And that means they're going out to fight. And then they camped beside um, uh, they camped out beside Even Har Etzer. Even Har Etzer. This really means a rock. Even, by the way, is a rock. This would be a stone, a rock, and it's a bigger piece, right? A bigger piece, Even. The second word here is Ezer. Ezer means for help. Now, this is the name of a place. And later on, there is a reason why it was called Even Ezer. And the Philistines camped in Afek. Yeah? Afek. This is actually Afek. So the PH is actually an F sound, right? Now, with this, it is saying that this is the event that is taking place after everything Samuel had said, right? It's after Samuel had said. And so this event is after. This word now literally means and then. And so the word, the davar of Samuel, came to pass in all Israel, and that's the description. He gave the words, right? He gave the words, and he and then these things happen, and that's the battle that's happening, right? The battle happened. Now we go to verse 2. The Philistines drew up in battle array. This is important. This is one word, right? Drew up in battle array to meet Israel. When the battle spread, this idea of spread is how should we say? This word means to the word spread. Let's see how to express this. It spread abroad. It started. It when the battle started and broke out. And so, what does this mean? It means that you have the Philistines in Afek. You have the Israelites at Even Ezer. And so the word spread means when they came into contact with each other, this is where the battle took place. And that's what it means by spread. And then Israel was defeated before the Philistines, who killed about 4,000 men in the battlefield. Now, this idea here is, how would you say, Israel was caused to be struck in battle. I think that would be a good way of expressing, but the English is okay. Caused to be struck in battle. Well, there are more words that explains the Hebrew, but the English word is fine. They were defeated before the Philistines killed about 4,000 men in the battlefield. This was a shock to Israel. Although Samuel would have said so, but the idea of what Samuel said, we don't have the words, but it's about the lamp of God going out. In verse 3, again, this is a narrative. When the people came into the camp, came back. Now remember, the war, the Philistines at Ephek, the Israelites at Ebenezer, they came to the center and they had a big war. After that, they went back. This is how they fought in the battle those days, right? You each lined up on one side and then you fought the battle and then you go back. So about 4,000 men died, and the elders of Israel said, why has the Lord defeated us today before the Philistines? Now, this word defeated is not the same word we saw just now. This word defeated literally means, why did God strike them? This is like the plague, right? You could actually think of this word as a plague. The word can also be inflict. And so they are looking at the situation. And as I mentioned to you many times, when they do not understand why certain things happen, they ascribe it to God. And now that 4,000 men had died, they are saying, why did God strike us today in front of our enemies? What happened? And that's what's going on in their mind. The, the, the elders thought to themselves, well, maybe we need the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord. So let us take to ourselves from Shiloh the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord, that it may come among us and deliver us from the power of our enemies. Suddenly they remember what happened at Jericho a long time ago with Joshua. And so they thought, maybe we should take the Ark of the Covenant. The Ark of God would be a great symbol and an encouragement, and to show the Philistines that God is with them and they will win this battle. So what they did was, by their own accord, the people sent to Shiloh, and from there carried the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord of hosts, who sits above the cherubim. And more importantly, now that we are reading, the two sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, were there with the Ark of the Covenant of God. Now, what we are not told is that the Ark of the Covenant has to be carried by the Levites on poles. And the sons of Eli, Hophni, and Phinehas went with them to battle. And so now we have the Ark of the Covenant coming from Shiloh. And they thought that this would be the symbol to win. Now, what they didn't understand was that at the time of Joshua, it wasn't the people that decided what to do. At the time of Joshua, it was God telling Joshua what and how to do. And so in this case, you find that this particular battle was when Israel decided to go after the Philistines, and they lost the battle. And they said, well, maybe we had a pattern then. We should have the Ark of the Lord, and then we could win this battle. And so they thought. Verse 5. The Ark of the Covenant of the Lord came into the camp of all. And so all Israel shouted with a great shout, so that the earth resounded. Now, this word shouted, how this is calls to cry out, right? This is cry out. This is like a war cry. And when you've got so many people in a war cry, literally the earth resounded. The earth actually was caused to roar or agitate. It sounded like an earthquake in that sense. It's like the earth is shaking. And when the Philistines heard the noise of the shout, and they said, what does the noise of this great shout in the camp of the Hebrews mean? Now, this word Hebrew, Ivrim, right? Ivrim for plural, but Ivrit for singular. The Israelites are called Hebrew people, right? These are the Israelites. And their tribe is of the people of the Hebrews of Ever, right? Ivrim. And then they understood. This word understood is also know. Remember what know means, right? You have observation, you can see, you perceive, you understand, you then have knowledge. So you notice the Hebrew word understood actually is know. It's all of these. So they sat down, they observed, they talked to each other, they tried to figure out, and then they understood. What did they understand? They understood that the ark of the Lord had come into the camp. And in the mind of the Philistines, it's like the God of Israel is with them. Consequently, the Philistines were afraid. Verse 7, afraid, terrified. This is the word used about fearing God, right? Fear God, but now they fear the Israelites. For they said, God has come into the camp. And by God, this would mean Elohim. And so it says, Elohim has entered into the camp of the Israelites, right? Into the camp of the Israelites. Now, they have heard about this before, and they said to themselves, woe to us. Now, woe, this is a Semitic word. It's a Jewish Israelite word. The Jews love to say this when they sigh in disappointment. And this word is hoi. Hoi to us. Uh, and that is how this word comes about. The word woe to us, it's like, oh no, right? Oh no to us. It's a lamentation. It's like a disappointment for us. So he says, for nothing like this has happened before. In all the wars of the Philistines, they've never had God in the camp of the opponents. So Elohim has come into the camp of the Israelites. It's nothing happened before, and they're going to die. Oh no, oh no. And that would be the idea that's communicated to us in verse 7. Verse 8, woe to us. Who shall deliver? Now, this word deliver would be save, right? Who would save us from the hand of these mighty gods? Now, the English words or the Hebrew words actually have the word these and gods, right? This word is Elohim. And so this would be a plural, right? A plural demonstrative pronoun. Um, the mighty gods, and mighty here would be powerful, I think. It would be a good word. Powerful Elohim. And so when they look at this, they are seeing, I don't think that it should be gods. I think it would be this, the same word here. Because of the grammar, this would be these, because it must pair with Elohim, which is a plural word. And so this in itself would tell us that I think they're talking about who shall save us from the hand of the mighty God, which is Israel's Elohim, right? Israel's Elohim. It says, these are the gods. Again, these and Elohim, they are grammatically correct because that's how it is worded. But in a translation, I would use this. This is the God. And it says this, who smote the Egyptians with all kinds of plagues in the wilderness. And the plagues would be the 10 plagues. And everyone in the land has heard of this event. And now the Philistines, why were they afraid? Because this is the God who struck the Egyptians. Obviously, the emotions at this point in time, they thought about it. Logically, they are dejected. Logically, how can anyone who has left Egypt, the mighty kingdom of the Egyptians, would be able to face such an enemy? The Israelites is not your run-of-the-mill enemy that they've been fighting, and Elohim is actually with them in the camp. And so the response is this. He says, strengthen yourself. The word take courage literally means strengthen yourself. Strengthen yourself, right? And be men. Come on, be men. What does be men means? Well, be men. Be an adult, right? Be an adult man. Now, in those days, all those at war are not women. They are all men. And as you recall, in the book of Exodus and the book of Numbers, they were counting the heads of men who were 20 years and above. And so we could take that as an example that they are trying to tell each other, strengthen yourself and be men, meaning you are men of war. Don't be little children to be afraid, O Philistines, right? That's the idea here. Or you will become slaves to the Hebrews as they have been slaves to you. Therefore, be men and fight. This in itself is the response of the Philistines. Who were saying these? This would be the leaders of the Philistines. And they believe that they are the Lord of the land. If they do not win this battle, then they will be subservient to the Hebrews. If they win this battle, then the Hebrew people will be subservient to them. And so, God or no God, go and fight. And so, whatever symbolism of God, just put it aside and go and fight. And that would be the idea that is being carried out. So, in verse 10, the Philistines fought and Israel was defeated. Now, this word defeated means was caused to be struck. That's the word defeated. So the Philistines struck hard and inflicted a great defeat upon Israel. And the Israelite, every man fled to his tent. And the slaughter was very great, For there fell of Israel 30,000 foot soldiers. Remember, first battle, 4,000. Second battle with the ark, 30,000. This is a huge number. If you're not familiar, the number would be one, well, almost the number of one tribe would have been wiped out from this one battle. So, for all intents and purposes, I'm just trying to help us understand the, the graveness, the seriousness of this particular battle with the Philistines. It is not a street fight. This is a major battle, and they were defeated. And not only that, in the way that they were defeated, the ark of the Lord was taken. And the Philistines took it away. And the two sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, they died. And so this also fulfilled the words of Samuel. Remember yesterday when we were beginning to read about God calling Samuel, Samuel, Samuel. And then finally, Eli told Samuel, when you hear this voice, answer, here I am. What would you like your servant to do? And God revealed to Samuel the davar. And then Eli says, please tell me the davar. And that was exactly what was said. And Eli said, if that is what God wants to do, he will do what fits his eyes, what is good in his eyes. And right now in chapter 4, verse 11, at this point in time, the words of Samuel was fulfilled. The sons of Eli died. Now, a man of Benjamin ran from the battle line and came to Shiloh the same day with his clothes torn, dust on his head, because he was somewhere away from Shiloh. He was at Ebenezer, or Ebenezer. And, well, traditions have, now again, I say traditions is Jewish traditions. So take it with a pinch of salt. That the Jewish tradition says that this was Saul. We don't know who he is, right? So I'll just put a bracket and a question mark. And if it was, we won't know. And so he came back to Shiloh, where it was safe and sound, and he brought news. Verse 13, when he came, Eli was sitting on his seat by the road, eagerly watching, because his heart was trembling for the ark of God. So the man, who is this man? The Benjamite, who came from Ebenezer, came to tell it in the city, and all the city cried out. Now, understand this. Eli was the judge, right? He was the judge at the time. That's why he was sitting on his seat. This is the judgment seat. By the road, eagerly watching, and by the road means the road that was in front of the tabernacle. Because his heart, now the word road, how should I say? Maybe this word is the way. Maybe the word road is not quite what we say, the way, right? So there was a pathway in front of the tabernacle where Eli was seated as a judge. Remember, all judges sit at the gate. And so that was next to the gate of the tabernacle. And his heart was trembling. What do you mean by trembling? He was afraid. He was afraid for the ark of God. He was not only afraid, he was shaking all over. And that's how you would understand this word. He was shaking. Now I know some translations will say it was a reverential fear. It was none of those. He was actually trembling and shaking. And so remember, the Hebrew expressions are all very visual and physical. So his heart was shaking, and it probably shook all the way out. You could tell that it was demonstrated visibly in his person, maybe his hands, but it was shaking. And verse 14, when Eli heard the noise of the outcry, what outcry? The city crying out. The city means the people there in Shiloh. He said, what is the noise of this commotion? What is this sound? Right? What is this sound? Then the man came hurriedly and told Eli. And this means that he reported. This is the word told. It is not just telling like a conversation. This is like a soldier reporting to the superiors. Now we read in verse 15. We are now told, right before this, what was said, there is a sidebar. We are now told at this time Eli was 98 years old. He was 98 now. This is in chapter 4. He was then 40 years ago. That would be 58 in chapter 1. That was when he became judge. All right. Now, you have to trust me for it. We'll get there because he judged for 40 years. We will get there to find out why it was 40 years. His eyes were set so he could not see. The word set was firm. It appears that his eyes had closed and he was not able to see what was happening. That's why he said, please tell me. And then the man said to Eli, I am the one who came from the battle line. Indeed, I escaped. I fled from the battle line today, this day. And Eli said, how did things go, my son? Now, understand in the Hebrew, whenever you read this, my son, you can assume that the person speaking is like the father, older, right? And so we know that he was 98 years old. Then verse 17 is the shocker to Eli. Then one who brought the news replied, which is that Benjamite, and he said this, Israel has fled before the Philistines. Fled means to run away, to escape, to take flight, to disappear, right? To disappear, run away before the face of the Philistines. And there had also been a great slaughter among the people. Now, the word slaughter literally means a plague, a great plague. That is the same word, a great blow. And that is to tell him that there was 30,000 men who died. Now, even worse news, your two sons also died, Hophni and Phinehas. They are both dead. And even worse news, the ark of the God has been taken by the Philistines. So what is the report? We have a couple of things here, right? This is the report. Israel has disappeared before the Philistines, and there has been a great slaughter among the people. Your two sons are dead, and the ark is taken. All three are great shockers to a 98-year-old man. Verse 18, when he mentioned the ark of God, Eli fell off the seat backwards beside the gate. The word backward means the back part, the back part of the seat. So if he was seated and this was the seat, and this is the front, so the back part would be there, right? He fell to the back. And then his neck was broken. The word here means the neck bone joint was snapped. I think this word is snap. I think it would be a better word. And he died. So you notice this in Hebrew narrative, you can see he fell backwards and then his neck was broken and then he died. So you notice it's in the sequence. For he was old and heavy. Now, what does it mean for he was old and heavy? This word for literally means because. Because he was old means he was weak already. He was heavy means the weight of his body is big. And the force cracked his neck. That's it. And thus he judged Israel. Remember, I put there 40 years. And so that's how we can come to the conclusion that at 98, he would be 58 when he became judge in chapter 1. So this is how we piece together all the numbering. Verse 19. Now his daughter-in-law, Phinehas' wife, she was pregnant and about to give birth, meaning she was close to giving birth. Right? Close to giving birth. And when she heard the news that, what news? The ark of God was taken. That's number one. Then number two, that her father-in-law and her husband had died. Number two. And then we are now told this was a shock to her and it stimulated the birth. She knelt down and gave birth, for her pains came up upon her. And the women will understand that such a great shock, this in fact is a great shock to a pregnant woman, and it induced labor, and she gave birth. In verse 20, at about the time of her death, what does that mean? It means that she probably was dying in labor. The women who stood by her said to her, "Do not fear. Do not fear. Do not be afraid. For you have given birth to a son." So the idea is, be happy, but she did not answer or pay any attention to them, meaning she did not put to heart. That's the Hebrew words, right? Did not put to heart. Verse 21, and she called the boy. This word is named, right? She gave name to the boy. What is the name? The name is this name. The name is Ikavod. Ikavod. And the word Ikavod literally means no glory. This is the meaning of the word. No glory. The idea of kavod is glory, honor, respect. And this is kavod or in kavod. The glory is gone. That would be a better way of saying the glory is gone. There's no more glory. So the glory has departed from Israel in her mind because the ark of God was taken. And because her father in law, the judge, and her husband, the priest, also died. There is no more glory. She said, the glory has departed from Israel, for the ark of God was taken. Now, let us wrap this up. She, as all Israelites, understand the glory of Israel is demonstrated by the ark of God in the tabernacle. And so the tabernacle really is nothing without the ark symbolism in their minds. When the ark is gone, then what we have is the presence of God, or the symbol of the presence of God is gone, because God always appeared in a pillar of cloud above the Ark of the Covenant to Moses. And you would read this in the book of Exodus, in the book of Numbers as well. And so when the Ark of God is gone, in the minds of the Israelite, the presence of God has departed. What does departed means? Well, this word departed means gone into exile. Is moved from Shiloh to an alien place. It has left Shiloh. It has left Israel. It has left the control of Israel. For the ark of God was taken by the Philistines. Now, this has never ever happened before to Israel. And if you remember, the ark itself is an important presence because when the ark went forward, it was God leading the charge. When God told Joshua to take the ark ahead of him, that's God instructing how the battle was to be fought. In this case, there was no instruction for them, at least we were not told, that this was a war that God wanted them to fight. So they decided to fight this war, as we can infer from verse 1, that they went ahead and fought, and God wasn't with them. And they thought if they had brought the ark, everything would be fine. And worse, 30,000 died. And the ark was taken just to give them the knowledge that God is unhappy with their decision to fight the Philistines at this time. And whatever decisions they have made, they made it on their own. And God showed them that everything that Samuel had said to them has come to pass. The glory of God, the weight of God. Remember, this word glory, kavod, literally means honor. The honor of God is the ark. Honor your father and mother, same word. The honor of Israel. is the ark? So it's a symbolism that when the honor of Israel is removed, then what are they to do? And they are now in a panic mode. It was a cry of disappointment. It was in such an agony that they've never ever experienced, because they never ever thought they would ever lose any battle when they had the ark. Little did they know that when Moses had the ark, when Joshua had the ark, it was always by the instructions of God. In this case, there was none. And with this, we come to the end of chapter 4.